Thursday, January 21st, 2021. We are in our second week of our devotional Bible study series, Rooted in the Word. The videos for that are available on Right Now Media. They're very brief videos, 3-4 minutes each day. First week we talked about how we go and study Scripture. This week we've been looking at Philippians chapter 1. The next 3 weeks we'll do chapters 2, 3, and 4. Monday and Tuesday we did observation. Yesterday we did interpretation. Today we're doing application. Tomorrow would be a little bit more of a reflection day, but we're going to do that today since I'm normally not in the office on Fridays. So as I watch through the video and look through the material, it really is more taking what we've said and just putting it into our minds. So looking back, so we'll do a little bit of reflecting back on the whole thing, but we're going to do it a little bit differently than they did. After they did application on day 4, day 5, they went and reflected a bit. We're going to reflect back to help us with the application. Um, so a reminder of our observations, the structure of Philippians chapter 1. You've got the introduction in the first few verses. Then after that, you've got Paul's prayer for the people, his heartfelt prayer for them as he talked about his relationship with them and his love for them in Christ and his desire to see them grow in their love as a result of Christ in their lives. And then he goes on to report about his current circumstances, that he is in prison for the sake of the gospel, that there are some who are encouraged and emboldened by Paul's imprisonment to proclaim the gospel even more. And then there are others who didn't really care for Paul and think they could make it hard for Paul if they emphasize the reason why he's there and they proclaim the gospel more boldly. And Paul's response is, so what? Regardless of what their motivation, whether people are purely motivated or motivated out of envy, they're preaching Jesus Christ and he's being made known. And so for that, I rejoice. He's not saying that their motivation is okay, that it's all right, or that it's not a sin. But what he is saying is that for his part, someone's preaching the gospel of Jesus Christ, fine, preach it. Um, and so he's not overly concerned about his circumstances, though he is wondering whether or not he'll live or die. He's in prison. Depending on the outcome of the trial, he could be put to death, which was not uncommon in those days. And but again, for him, eh, whatever was sort of his attitude. Because if I die, I'm with Christ, which is better for me. If I live, I get to continue proclaiming the gospel and be a blessing to you and to others. So I don't really know which I'll choose, but I'm thinking I'm going to remain here because there's still more that needs to be done. Um, so that's the content of it. And we looked at some of the emphases. The name Christ is mentioned repeatedly just in this first chapter, reminding us of the foundation. And we got our understanding that the theology that our relationship with one another, our vertical or our horizontal relationship with one another, is based on our vertical relationship with God. Being joined to Him, we are joined to one another. So theologically, we get that out of there. We also get some teaching on that death for Christians is a transition point. It's not what it wasn't, we could go back and look and see it. Genesis chapter 2 and 3, it wasn't a part of God's design for mankind to die, but it is part of our life. And as Christians, we know that before we die, the Lord is with us, and after we die, the Lord is with us. So um, it's not something that we need to live in terror of, because we know that God is going to be with us. He will provide for us and support us in this life as we proclaim His grace, and He'll be with us afterwards. And so we get that tension we talked about yesterday of the now and not yet. God is with us and we are saved now, but God will be with us and will save us on that day. So we live in that tension of that. And so in terms of application, the one question that they ask on the worksheet is, in what ways is God asking you to apply Philippians 1 to your everyday life. Um, and so I was looking through and thinking about the content of Philippians and our interpretive reflections on it. And I really came to the emphasis of Paul looking at his circumstances of being in prison and the um, the two different people that were preaching as a result of it, both envious and those that were positively motivated, and Paul's response of saying the key is the proclamation of the gospel. That was his message to the Philippians, because I'm guessing, again, going back to some observation, that the Philippians, based on their relationship with Paul, probably were concerned about him. Um, they had sent people from Philippi to see Paul to encourage him and support him and to provide for some of his needs. And so there was a care and concern about that. And Paul's response is, it's not about circumstances. It's about the proclamation of Christ. In this circumstance, I'm proclaiming Christ to the guard, to those that are in authority here, and the word is being preached in the community by those that are still outside, that are either emboldened by me or envious of me. Regardless, they're still preaching the gospel. And as I thought about that being Paul's message to the church in Philippi, that his circumstances were not the key, but the key was, what was he doing in those circumstances? And it was the same as he is always doing, which is proclaiming the gospel of Jesus Christ. And I thought about that for my own life, and the idea that God does not call us to be focused on changing our circumstances. Um, Certainly, that can be a part of our life, but that's not our focus. That is not our drive. That's not our goal in life, is to improve and change our circumstances. If something bad is going on, I need to change these circumstances because that is my goal. That may happen. That may be something that we do, but what is our emphasis? What is our purpose as Christians? And what Paul is stating here is that our purpose is to proclaim the gospel message of Jesus Christ in all circumstances. Um, Whether he was in prison or free, whether he was to be put to death, to glorify God even in his death, um, or in his life, to glorify God. And that is our goal. And I think for me, looking at this in terms of application, um, my goal should be similarly focused, that I should be about proclaiming Christ in the current circumstances. Um, take what's been on all of our minds for about 10, 11 months now, and that is the COVID pandemic. And, I want to change things. I want church to go back to being the way it was. I want people to be coming to worship and to not be afraid. And I want our worship services to be like they were before all this hit, with the addition of the live stream. Um, and so I want to change the circumstances. And especially early on, I spent a lot of time looking at what are the regulations, what are the government orders that are coming down, what are the expectations, what are we being told we have to do, and how can I work within that or change that to match what I want to do. And the focus needs to be, all right, this is the circumstance. How do I now proclaim the gospel of Jesus Christ in this circumstance? Well, we live stream services, while we connect with people in other ways. I'm doing these daily devotional reflections, um, trying to make sure that the gospel is out there. And that needs to be my mental attitude as well. Um, I find myself at times very much like Israel in their desert wanderings, grumbling and complaining about the things, that we used to have. Um, Back in Egypt, we had, pots full of meat, and we weren't starving or dying of thirst or anything like that. And looking back And we do this not only in terms of the pandemic, but in terms of the church as a whole. We look back to the quote unquote glory days of the church rather than saying, all right, this is the circumstances we live in now. This is the cultural context that we find ourselves in now. How do I proclaim the gospel of Jesus Christ here? And that for me was the application, the put this into practice in my life, is to really check my attitude on a regular basis. Am I doing things to change my circumstances because I want better circumstances for me, or am I doing things that I feel will more effectively proclaim the gospel message of Jesus Christ right now? Um, and if that changes my circumstances, fine. And if it doesn't, fine. Um, but I want Christ to be glorified in me and in us as a ministry. Um, it sounds good. I know ahead of time that's not just an easy, casual thing to assert. Uh, Changing our attitude, we can say all sorts of things, but it's what is on our heart, and I think that's something that I need to keep in mind and check, uh, especially as working with leadership as we're moving forward on things, making sure that what I'm looking at is faithful proclamation of the gospel. That is the one and only goal and purpose that we now have in life as believers in Jesus Christ. So um, it's not necessarily going to be the application you're going to take out of that. And that's one of the things they say in the video is that our life circumstances are different. And even though the observations, because the text is always the text, and the interpretations have to come from the text. Those are always the same. Taking those same principles and applying them to our lives may have different impacts because of where we're at in our lives. So I'd encourage you to take time today and take time in your devotions tomorrow. Again, I'm not going to come online and do a reflection tomorrow. We'll come back again on Monday and start on Philippians chapter 2. But I would encourage you maybe tomorrow to spend some time rereading through Philippians chapter 1. Maybe if you wrote down some notes as we went through this, review your notes and think through, what can I be doing today to glorify God? What can I be doing today to ensure that He is at the center of my life and my relationships with others? And through that, we will see the blessings of what God has given to us in His Word in Philippians chapter 1, bearing fruit in our lives. Have a blessed day in the Lord, and we'll see you possibly on Sunday. Worship is at 8 and 10:30, both here at the church in the sanctuary, as well as online at goodshepherdssaginaw.com. We'll see you later. God bless you.